All right, in our last episode, we imported our MovieLens dataset into a MySQL database on our little Hortonworks sandbox instance here. And now we're going to actually use Sqoop to import that data from MySQL to HDFS on our little fake cluster here. But first, we need to set the appropriate permissions on that table in MySQL so that Sqoop can actually access it and talk to it. So let's log back into MySQL, mysql-u root-p. And again, the default password is Hadoop. And what we're going to do is type in grant all privileges, make sure you spell that right, on movielens.star, meaning all the tables in the MovieLens database, to single quote, at single quote localhost, single quote. All right, so that should give privileges to the MovieLens database from localhost. So as I run Sqoop on localhost and connect to it as localhost, we should have the appropriate privileges. So exit, and now let's actually run Sqoop, shall we? So just like we did in the slides, I'm going to type in that same command that we talked about. Sqoop, S-Q-O-O-P, no U in Sqoop, kind of a funny word. Import, meaning we're importing into HDFS, -- connect, JDBC, MySQL, / localhost / MovieLens. So this is saying we're going to be connecting through JDBC to a MySQL database on localhost to the MovieLens database. Okay, with me so far? -- driver, com.mysql.jdbc.driver. Just explicitly sets the driver we're going to use to talk to our database. -- table movies, meaning that we want to import the movies table only. And finally, I'm going to say -m1 to say I only want to run one mapper because I'm only on one host here, so there's kind of no point to having more than one. Now, if you were on a real cluster, you would leave that -m argument off because you really would want to parallelize this operation if you were really dealing with big data on a big cluster. Let's go ahead and hit enter and see what happens. Now again, I want to reiterate that these sorts of tools that we're using with Hadoop are really intended for big data sets. So there's a lot going on here, a lot of overhead for doing what's actually a pretty simple operation. And again, it doesn't make sense if you're using small data sets with this sort of a thing. But let's imagine that we did have a massive data set and all this overhead was worth it. You can see there's a ton of stuff going on here. I mean, you can actually see where it's kicking off MapReduce jobs to actually transfer the data from MySQL to HDFS using, potentially more than one mapper. And finally, it finished. That's pretty cool. So let's take a look at what it actually did. Let's spark up our web browser here and connect to 127.0.0.1 in order to get into Ambari. Sign in as Maria_dev, Maria_dev. And let's go to our files view. Remember, this imported it into HDFS, not the local file system, so we need to view the HDFS file system. So from the files view, let's see what we got. All right, now we were under the user directory for MariaDev when we ran that, and sure enough, there's the movies directory that was created under my home directory that I ran from. And we have a little success file here, and we have the actual output. And you can see there's only one part to this output because we specified one mapper. If we actually had more than one mapper, you would see multiple parts to this file spread out across multiple files. But it's okay. Things like Hive can refer to this directory as just, one single entity. Let's go ahead and take a look at what's in there. Hit open on that file and take a little peek. You can see what it actually gave us was just plain old flat, comma delimited data, straight up export of that movies table that was in MySQL, except now it lives on a big old file in HDFS. And remember, the power of HDFS is that file might be distributed across many different hosts, across many different hosts on my cluster, across many blocks, and also stored redundantly. So, we've done more than just dump our database to a file here. We've dumped it into HDFS, which, opens up a whole world of possibilities for analyzing it in a robust and scalable and a manner that can be, resilient to failure. So there, it worked. We actually got our data out of MySQL into HDFS using Sqoop. Pretty cool stuff. So let's go ahead and delete that directory, because if we're going to be playing with it some more, things don't work if you try to create the same data twice. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean up my mess here by deleting that folder. Bye-bye. All right, so now let's show you how you can actually import it straight into Hive. So we actually went to a file on HDFS there, or a series of files, but let's say all you care about is putting it into Hive. Well, I can do that too. Let's go back to our command prompt here on our host, and I'm just going to hit the up arrow to recreate what I did before, and all I'm going to do is add one more argument to this, --hive-import. And this is going to tell Sqoop, I don't want you to dump it to a file, I want you to go straight into Hive. So create a movies table in Hive, and have Hive own that data and put it wherever it wants to. So let's go ahead and kick that off. We'll see how that works. Off it goes. Again, kicking off a MapReduce job. And this time, it's going to put it straight into the Hive warehouse. So some time has passed here. I just want to point out that it's probably going to get stuck at this stage where it talks about using Kafka. We haven't even talked about Kafka yet, but again, it's another very highly distributed tool for just broadcasting data to a cluster. And doesn't make a whole lot of sense on a single machine, and that's actually going to time out. But don't get worried when it sticks here for a couple of minutes. It will move on. All right, and we're finally done here. So again, a lot of overhead to doing this, so it doesn't make sense to do it if you're on a small data set. But for big data sets, that overhead could very well be worth it. So let's see if it worked. According to these messages, it did. It went into the default Hive database and into a movies table. So let's go take a look. Going back to Ambari, let's go to the Hive view. And after it does its service checks, we should see under the default database, look at that, a movies table. Aha! Let's take a quick peek at it. That little icon just does a little limit 100 on the entire table to let you visualize what's inside of it. And there we have it. Hey, it worked. Cool. So we now have a movies table in Hive that contains movie IDs, movie titles, and their release dates. So fun stuff. All right, so we've successfully imported data from MySQL into HDFS and directly into Hive. So let's talk about in the next lecture how to actually go the other direction. Let's go from this Hive table back into MySQL. We'll do that next.